You know how accused child murderer David has been under investigation for months by authorities? Well, we just learned some key details about the secret grand jury proceedings that we're hearing evidence in this case, and the defense is about to get a hold of some very important information. I am going to explain what all of this means for the man accused of brutally killing a 14-year-old girl. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, we have an update in our David coverage that we need to talk about. We just got a big behind-the-scenes sneak peek at what the prosecutors in this case, the Los Angeles DA's office, has been up to in this case over the past year. And I think it's pretty significant. Now, I'm curious what exactly this is going to mean.
You know how accused child murderer David has been under investigation for months by authorities? Well, we just learned some key details about the secret grand jury proceedings that we're hearing evidence in this case. The quote is dry. It's bureaucratic. It is the legal equivalent of a locked steel door. But behind that door is a 14-year-old girl who will never turn 15, and a man whose profession was to sing about love, now accused of an act so methodical that the evidence list reads like a hardware store inventory. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
Lawful mutilation of human remains, all in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Prosecutors allege that he was in a sexual relationship with her, that back on April 23, 2025, he allegedly lured her to his rental home in LA, stabbed her to death, allegedly watched her bleed out, and then reportedly took horrifying measures to conceal this alleged crime, all in an effort to keep her quiet about their relationship, to prevent her from coming forward and ruining.
Stop calling me Lindsay. That is the official public memorial from the President of the United States to a man who was, by every other account, his closest ally in the Senate.
Doesn't mean that there wasn't a grand jury. No, there were grand juries. In fact, there were reportedly multiple grand juries hearing evidence in this case. And perhaps they were investigative grand juries, right? Not in panel per se to get an indictment, but to present evidence, to subpoena witnesses, to get documents, to lock in
The
testimony.
official cause of death is a sudden cardiac event. But the president's narrative dropped a bomb that threatened the entire foundation of that story. Graham, the hawkish Republican, the man who spent his final days advocating for Ukraine to continue to keep the war going, was being blamed by the president for prolonging a conflict Trump allegedly wanted to end quickly.
20th, 2026 and February 23rd, 2026. So this is really the first time that we got a sense of how many times, at least, grand juries met. For how long? On which days? Now, I want to put those dates into the timeline here because you look at those dates, and I'm trying to put two and two together, right? So we know that September 8th is when Celeste's body was reportedly found in the Tesla, okay? But now
He also discussed Graham's golf game, noting he wasn't Jack Nicklaus or Tiger, a dying man's legacy reduced to a handicap. Senator Graham, who had just returned from a trip to Ukraine, who was a key player in the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, and who the president had spoken to just hours before his death, was merely tired.
By the way, just going to that report, you read verbatim from the summary portion. It says in part, quote, autopsy examination was limited by extensive post-mortem changes. There are 2 penetrating wounds of the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp force injuries. The wound on the upper abdomen penetrates the liver, and the wound on the left chest penetrates one of the left intercostal spaces with disruption of the adjacent ribs' cortical surfaces. The left lung appears intact. The bilateral upper and lower extremities show full thickness dismemberment. Multiple other skin and soft tissue defects are present.
The second a person is no longer useful, they cease to be a person and become just another story.
That he used a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument, and prosecutors allege that he purchased all these things: a blue inflatable pool, chainsaws, a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and that he dismembered her. He dismembered her body. That he made suspicious trips to the Santa Barbara County area, that he lied to friends and associates about the alleged smell of decomposition.
Then immediately pivoted to, he would call me all the time. I'd say, stop calling me, Lindsay. And then there was the eulogy. He was a total workaholic politician, Trump added, seemingly unaware of his own irony. Now, some people don't call that work. Some people call that a lot of talking. In the aftermath of a sudden death, where is the respect? Where is the unity? Instead, we got a reminder that loyalty to Trump is a one-way street.
That David was no longer cooperating with the investigation. We know November 21st, 2025 is when the court orders that the LAPD medical examiner's report and information on Celeste's death be sealed, that a security hold
Before we
is
go
placed.
deeper into what the president's words actually reveal, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Consider the official statement. It is not a tribute, it is a performance. The president, in his interview with Fox News, didn't just mourn the loss, he dissected the corpse of a political friendship in public. He reduced the man who sacrificed his political identity to defend him to a series of humorous anecdotes about golf and grievances. He said he was a great guy and he was a friend.
Also, the lockdown on the information, what does that tell us? They don't want anyone to know the facts that only the killer would have known. So they've got to lock that down. They want to make sure that there's nothing publicly released that a potential defense attorney would say, okay, this is something that only the killer knows, but we've got to make sure that we can defend against it. Prosecutors want to make sure that nothing gets out forensically that somehow leaks into the air and that a potential defense team gets hold of.
But the most important voice, the voice of the man who owed Graham his presidency's survival through 2 impeachments and countless legislative battles, decided to remember him less like a fallen statesman and more like a telemarketer he couldn't get rid of. This isn't a eulogy, it's a document dump of the soul.
Was arrested in Montana, allegedly at his mom's house, reportedly for failing to appear as a witness. It was reported that the local PD assisted the LAPD in this. February 4th, 2026. That's one of the key dates, right? TMZ reports that Langston appears in a Los Angeles courtroom, reportedly to testify before a grand jury, but only for 30 to 40 minutes. Raised a lot of questions that if that's true, what did he testify to? Was he granted immunity? Did he plead the fifth against self-incrimination? We know February 2026 also was a key month because that's when David's father, mother, brother had challenged subpoenas requiring them to travel to LA
Follow the
and testify.
timeline. There is a document called the Sudden Unexplained Death in Washington file. It's not a joke. It is the raw data of political warfare. We are directing you to look at the public record of Graham's recent trip to Ukraine.
The reason I even found out about this, before we even talked about what TMZ was reporting, Steve Fisher, the private investigator hired by the owner of the Hollywood Hills property where David was purportedly staying, near where the Tesla was found. He'd been looking into this case for months. I saw his post on X. This is what alerted me to it. He posted on X, quote, "A motion filed in the David case reveals that the investigative grand jury met on 17 separate days. We are now only 10 days away from the preliminary hearing, and I look forward to hearing the witness testimony."
Look at who immediately starts talking. The president wanted to take credit for the peace process. Graham was in the way.
Back from Montana, I think one of 3 things could have happened. 1, he takes the fifth, all right? He invokes his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself. 2, he lays some kind of foundational testimony, but for whatever reason, they don't go beyond 30 or 40 minutes. And then 3, the third possibility, I think, is that there's some kind of immunity deal that gets launched right about then. And for whatever reason,
Go to the official congressional record. Look at the timeline of the phone call. Look at the president's own social media posts about the peace deal. And then ask yourself, does the president really think his friend died of a heart attack? Or does he know something he isn't telling us? Because a workaholic politician, a total one, doesn't just stop. Project Cold Case is dedicated to finding the truth. This video was just the beginning. If you found this breakdown compelling, hit the like button, share it with someone who is tired of the manipulation, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an investigation. We follow the evidence wherever it leads.
Petition. And notably, at a court hearing, Bennett Dodson, assistant DA for Waller County, told the court, "Don't think it's a secret to anyone at this point that Mr. David Burke is a musician who is quite famous, and this matter concerns a car that was registered to him at these witnesses' address here in Houston that had a dismembered, decomposing body in it. I would say if a car
The
with
official
a
cause of death is a sudden cardiac event. But the president's narrative dropped a bomb that threatened the entire foundation of that story. Graham, the hawkish Republican, the man who spent his final days advocating for Ukraine to continue to keep the war going, was being blamed by the president for prolonging a conflict Trump allegedly wanted to end quickly.
What are
So
they
you've
going to
got
do with them? How's it
statements
gonna help
under
their
oath
case?
in a grand jury by witnesses for the prosecution, And the defense is going to track them. If they testify, if these witnesses testify differently at a preliminary hearing, at a trial, the defense has prior statements that they can use to challenge them, to impeach them. So for the defense, it's certainly helpful, because if the witnesses deviate even slightly from what they've said, defense is going to pounce on it. So while there is a benefit to the prosecution, the defense is going to get all the witness transcripts. The defense is going to get to pore over them. And by the way, the defense is also getting to see the prosecution's strategy, their theories early on. So there is a benefit for the defense.
The official cause of death is a sudden cardiac event. You can't be a workaholic if you're dead. So what was he working on that was so dangerous? Today we are asking the questions that the mainstream media refuses to touch because they are too busy transcribing the punchlines. There is a pattern in Washington. When you see a sudden death, look at who benefits.
The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office are under investigation. Under investigation for allegedly accessing law enforcement investigation files without proper authorization. And there is a belief that this is specifically about Celeste, about her death. And we know that there was an unfortunate aspect about this where there was the premature release of details about her death before the autopsy report was even published. And NBC had reported that it may have been the Celeste case that prompted this probe by the Human Resources Department. You tell me your thoughts.
You know how accused child murderer David has been under investigation for months by authorities? Well, we just learned some key details about the secret grand jury proceedings that were hearing evidence in this case. The quote is dry, it's bureaucratic. It is the legal equivalent of a locked steel door. But behind that door is a 14-year-old girl who will never turn 15, and a man whose profession was to sing about love, now accused of an act so methodical that the evidence list reads like a hardware store inventory. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
Of decomposition at his place. And we know that September 8th, 2025, that was the day after what would have been Celeste's 15th birthday, where her dismembered, decomposed body is found, reportedly in the front trunk of a Tesla, allegedly registered to David at an LA tow yard. And at the tow yard, detectives apparently open the Tesla's front storage compartment, find this black cadaver bag. It's covered in insects, and inside the bag, this is where they discover.
Reason his testimony is limited, but the prosecutors have worked some kind of a deal with him and his lawyers to get testimony, and that he gets basically gets to walk on any potential accessory charges or after the fact charges or anything like that. So I think it's one of those three things. Who knows? 30 to 40 minutes is not a lot of time, not a lot of information to get out, but it's very likely it's one of those could have been taken the Fifth Amendment, invoking his Fifth Amendment right.
To be clear, right? Investigators, prosecutors, they haven't indicated that anyone other than David is responsible for these alleged crimes. It does make you wonder, did Neil Langston see something, hear something, know about something? Is that what's going on? I mean, I really don't know. And I also have to say about the family, my 2 cents on the family is, I wonder if they're being called to make that connection between the Tesla, right, where Celeste's body was reportedly found, and linking it to it being registered to David out in Texas, right? Again, I don't know, but unless they allegedly know something about Celeste, I don't know, maybe about their relationship too, their purported relationship, because that's a key factor in this case too. What do you think the family's role is in this?
You know, I think it's foundational stuff. I think you're right. It's you know, what do they know about the relationship? What are the interconnections there? Because remember, the defense seems to be focusing now entirely on causation. I mean, this is going to be, you know, the prosecution has to prove he did it. It's not just some after the fact disposing of a body, the inappropriate disposing of a body, something like that. Everything seems to be pointing to causation. So the family is called to testify to try to